All right, what's up? What's up, KT? I guess now it's KTS.
No, I still go by KT. Like, that is still what people call me, what I refer to as, it's stuck. So,
Yeah.
KT.
So,
Tay. I'm like, do they call you Tay in the business world?
what is interesting? Tay turned into, in college, a lot of people, like in athletics, would call me TY.
Okay.
And that seems to have stuck, but my parents and my family still call me Tay. So if I hang out with my cousins, they're calling me Tay.
Gotcha. Okay.
I don't know. It sounds a little less masculine for sure, but I'll take it. Well, I just want to introduce you. Gosh, it's been a while since
It has been.
I mean, it's probably been like over a decade.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably say since your graduation. Like, that was
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So we went to high school together. Mm-hmm. Very close as far as the years we graduated. Krystal Thomas Smith is now what is now Krystal Thomas Smith, who is now Krystal Thomas Smith. It's Krystal Thomas back in the day. KT is why you get there. But she was a superstar in high school, college, professionally. So I kind of wanted to start there. How we know each other was high school.
Yes.
Borderline middle school.
Yeah, I mean, looking back on it, like, you were the star of the boys team, and I was the star of the girls team. Like, that's how it worked when we were playing at TFA. I was gonna bring it, but I forgot our little newspaper article. I still have it of us like posing on the side. And so, I mean, I just remember it was basketball, taking trips to North Side, playing basketball together. You were killing it on the boys' side. We were going to state Lakeland together, and playing. So our journey, we connected over the game of hoops, and luckily with technology and social media, we were able to reconnect the other day.
That is an amazing part about social media. Of all the challenges and like scary things that social media brings, the fact that we're able to reconnect after that many years, because we were pretty close, and then it's like, okay, you go your way. I kind of try to follow along, but then now social media, brings people back together.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, those were really fun days. Just for the listener, Krystal was a much more accomplished basketball player. If there's anything that I ever did in my career, you'll see shortly after some of these accolades certainly stand out. But I do. Can you please at least send me a picture of that? What she's talking about is we got interviewed by like the high school paper because we had two really good teams, and we were both kind of in the front of the class as far as individually. And we took this picture. I remember I was so hot outside.
Yes.
We're in their like school uniforms. We're sweating. And it's this picture on the outdoor basketball hoop. Yeah. It was a sweet picture.
It was like we both had basketballs and we both kind of like posed looking at the camera. I'll never forget it. I have it and I'm mad that I didn't bring it.
Well, send a picture to me. And then like when we post this or it comes out, I want to either have that like in the notes or just to show, and Lorenzo, shout out to him. He'll get some pictures of us here, and we'll be able to do some side-by-side cool stuff so people can see, blast from the past.
That'll work.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely blast from the
cool.
past.
Well, fast forward, we go to high school together. You break all sort of high school records, led the team. I mean, that was a really good women's team, really good 4 or 5 years of really good women's hoops. And TFA is the First Academy. It's a local school here in Orlando, Florida, small school. So 2 state titles?
2. We did. We went back-to-back my junior and senior year. My sophomore year, we went to the Final Four and lost on a heartbreak buzzer beater when we were trying to cap off our undefeated season. We lost in the Final Four to Father Lopez.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
So you guys on your sophomore and junior year.
Junior and senior year, we won. Sophomore was the buzzer
you could have won
beater.
it when you guys were young. Okay, I do remember that now that you're saying that. But, I mean, what accolades am I missing? I don't know. But McDonald's All-American. WBCA All-American, Florida Gatorade Player of the Year in 2007. Yes. Doesn't get much bigger than that in the state of Florida. And then you go on to Duke.
Yes.
By the way, how'd you select Duke? I mean, I remember one thing about high school is like every school in the country would be down there to see you. And it wasn't just you. You had some really good teammates, but a lot of it revolved around you. And it was like crazy. It was like lunch, North Carolina's here, Duke's here. I mean, everyone was there. Yeah. And so how was that process, and then how did you pick Duke?
So first I'll answer how I picked Duke. Duke was my dream school growing up. I just remember as a kid, I always wanted to be a doctor. And so one day I was watching the old school TV show ER. So it's like the old school Grey's Anatomy now. I was watching and I was like, I want to be a doctor. My mom was like, okay, well, you should go to Duke because they have a great medical school. So I said, okay, I'm going to Duke. And that was that.
Right.
So like I didn't know where it was, what it was, anything other than my mom said go to Duke.
That's hysterical.
And that's where it came from. So as I got older and my passion for medicine grew, then the recruiting process happened. That's when I chose to go to Duke. You know, I was like, okay, this is not just like my dream school. This is my reality school as well because it fits. And the recruiting process, I mean, it was crazy. I'm just so fortunate and blessed that the Lord allowed me to be able to be recruited at such a high level. But definitely every school in the nation did come by TFA, little old TFA. And so it was a lot, but I really tried to be very diligent in the recruiting process to make sure that I just didn't have this fantasy, but I really wanted to make sure that I found a school that fit everything that I also said that I wanted. And I whittled it down. I went on a ton of visits. I got it down to like my final 4 list of schools. And then once I visited Duke and fell in love with the campus and the coaches and everything that Duke had to offer, I said, okay, you know, we'll make this thing happen.
So how long did that go on? Because, I mean, for me, it was like every day somebody was there. That was pretty high profile and a big deal. Was that a 2-year process, 3-year process? When did you finally say, hey, this is where I'm going, and then that stopped? Did your senior year, you already knew where you were going?
I had committed by my senior year. I actually committed my junior year. So freshman, sophomore, junior year was like high octane recruiting.
Yeah.
And so by the time I got to my junior year, it was a relief to be done with just, you know, the entertaining and the coaches. Yeah. While again, it was such a blessing to be able to have that opportunity, but it gets to be a lot when you're a teenage kid. You know, I remember sitting in school, and this is before texting was like really popular. I remember I had my little blue Nokia phone where you still had to do like AAA,
playing Snake,
playing Snake. And so I'm texting these coaches, like trying to respond to them. And it's like, it's a lot. I should be in history class paying attention, but I'm trying to text them back. So very fortunate, but it was definitely a relief for it to be done.
Which does sound ridiculous for somebody that's like an aspiring athlete or maybe didn't get recruited at the level you did. Like, oh, I'm so exhausted from all these big time schools. But it's like that. I wasn't there, but that does become a thing. Like it just takes away from your focus, and you're getting schmoozed and interviewed and you know all that stuff. And so I'm glad you got to play your senior year and you already knew where you're going. So then fast forward a little bit. Duke had an unbelievable career. 4 years, captain your senior year. Looks like you guys won the ACC regular season and tournament a couple times.
We did another back-to-back. You know, I guess my thing was junior and senior year.
So it was junior, senior again.
So we were regular season and tournament champions my junior and senior year. In both of those years, we went to the Elite Eight as well in the tournament. 1 year we lost to UConn, which was... You know, we were in the midst of the UConn era where they won. I was going to say, UConn was, you know, kind of pretty good in the last 20 years. Yeah, like we were in the middle, right in the chunk of the UConn dynasty growing. But my junior year, we lost to Baylor on a tough game. They had Brittany Griner on their team. So great years, great runs at Duke.
That's crazy. That, like, women's basketball and with Brittany Griner in those years with UConn and Baylor, and then you all are some really good years.
Like really good years.
Did you have to guard Brittany Griner?
I did.
How was that? Do you have any good stories? Did she have a good game? Did you have a good game?
I always loved going against Brittany, so I guarded her that year. She was a freshman that year, so it was her first year on the scene with this phenom player. So it was my job to guard her. I was confident that I could guard her one-on-one, and I did. I actually played really well that game. Tough foul out at the very end of the game, so it's always a heartbreaker, and they ended up going on and winning. But then we ended up being teammates a little bit later in the WNBA, so came full circle. I've spent a lot of time guarding Brittany Griner over my career.
Wow. By the way, good experience at Duke. Was it everything you thought and more?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I loved it. I really did love every bit of it. To be able to say I graduated, you know, with a Duke degree, I'm super thankful for that. Yeah, it was awesome.
By the way, you know, my brother-in-law went to Duke. I don't know if you knew that.
No, I did not know that.
I know you know my wife, but her older brother went to Duke. Not on a basketball scholarship, but so I've gotten to know some Duke guys, and I grew up my family's all from Lexington, Kentucky. So I grew up as a UK fan, and you know, they hated Duke, and it was always like a thing. So like whenever I met, like I never met like Duke people in real life, and so I met my brother-in-law and a group of his friends at their wedding, and I was just expecting these guys to be like terrible guys. They were like really nice, and really like well-spoken, very, you know, considerate, gracious, and I was like, gosh, these Duke guys are great. So it really changed my perception of Duke.
Yeah, you know, everyone's human. And when in these rivalries, it's always like, they're awful people. Don't ever talk to them. Don't ever look at them.
I thought everyone was Christian Laettner. You know, in my head, I was just like, you know, everyone hits last second shots. And then, no, that's cool. That's really, really cool. So anyway, fast forward, you graduate.
Yes.
And then what was the draft process look like? Drafted 36 overall by Seattle Storm?
By the Seattle Storm. I take like pride because I was actually the last pick in the WNBA draft.
Okay.
So
do they break it down in 1 and 2 rounds, or is it just 1 round?
It's 3 rounds. So it's 12 in each round. The first one is like nationally televised, and the players go to the draft for the first round. Second round, they give it some kind of airtime, but not as much. And then third round is just kind of like the ticker at the bottom. So I was actually working out during the draft, like literally was in the weight room, wasn't really paying attention because I knew there was going to be a range of where I could be drafted. I really had no idea. I could be drafted as high as the second round, or I could not be drafted at all. So I said, okay, you know what? I'm just going to work out. We'll deal with the stress when it happens.
That sounds like an awesome, like tell all the GMs that, you know, KT's in there working out while they're doing the draft.
And so my name got called when it got called last. I had no idea. Like, I had no idea I had gotten drafted. I thought I was like, oh, it's over. You know, I wasn't drafted, but that's all right. I'll go on a training camp contract somewhere and I'll work my way into this. So my phone was like ringing. People were like, you got picked. I was like, by who? I don't even know who I got picked by. I was in the gym working out, and so I ended up getting drafted by Seattle. And so I literally was on the phone. He was the coach and GM at the time, and I was like, yeah, I was working out. Sorry I missed your call. Didn't know I got drafted. So
that's a great story. Was it you solo in the gym, or was there a workout partner?
My other senior, so there was 3 seniors. One of us, Jasmine Thomas, she went to the draft and got drafted first round. So the other senior, Karima Christmas, she got drafted second round. So she was in there working out with me. She just didn't miss her name. And then I was the other one in there, and yeah.
That's so funny. So how was it? So for the jump from college to the pros, like give me a glimpse of your professional career and kind of what you felt like, you know, was left to be desired, but what you feel like you've accomplished and learned from being, you know, essentially playing, you know, women's basketball at the highest level.
The thing about the WNBA and women's professional basketball that I think is very unique in comparison to men's basketball is the limited number of roster spots that are available. So there's 12 teams. And when I was drafted, there was only 11 players per team. So now there's 12. Wow. So we're talking about 100, if my math is right, 132 versus to 144 players in the entire world.
Wow.
So to even be able to just say I was drafted, that was a huge step. And then to make the team, that was a huge step. And then to play, that was a huge step. So I'm very humbled to be able to say I was a WNBA player just because I know I was one of 144. And you're playing against the best basketball players in the world. Yeah. Like from literally all over the place. They can run, jump, shoot, dunk, which is a huge element of the women's game now. So to be able to say I was a part of that, I'm just, again, super thankful that the Lord opened that door for me in the first place. I learned a lot. I experienced a lot. You know, the experiences as a pro probably weren't as glamorous as actually playing at Duke. Duke was actually a lot more high profile in terms of unlimited Nike gear. We flew charter flights. Yeah. We stayed at high class hotels, whereas in the WNBA, you don't do that. Sure. So we flew commercial. Like we're in Reagan Airport in DC, you know,
layover,
like in the middle of nowhere, sometimes delayed flights. I mean, we're in line, like trying to fight for the exit row seats just to get extra leg room, or else we're in the back row crammed by the toilet, you know? So, you know, there was highs and lows of it, but I am, you know, very honored to say that I played at the highest level for basketball.
That is incredible perspective. You mentioned dunking. There's only one person at this table that can dunk or has dunked. I was not able to dunk in high school. I mean, in a game specifically, I never got it done. And anyway, if you can't tell, Krystal was able to dunk. So anyway, I thought that was very notable because the women's game that used to be like, oh my gosh, there's only a few women in the world. And now it's like a lot of people are dunking.
They are. And you see it in like these high school videos on Instagram. There's young player after young player that is just like cramming it, not these little like, oh, roll it over. I mean, they are just
that's awesome,
slamming it home.
By the way, you mentioned I had this conversation with friends a lot about professional sports and like, okay, you have MLB, you have NFL, you have NBA, WNBA. I didn't even think about the limitation of roster spots because I always make the argument that the NBA is the toughest because there's only 32 teams and however many roster spots, and it's only a couple hundred people in the world. But now my mind's a little bit blown because I didn't know the limitation of the WNBA is even tougher. So just from a sheer numbers perspective, like that's so impressive and cool. And I think that's a really like proper way for you to say, hey, I'm humbled to be a part of that small group of elite people. Like regardless of what happened or happens, it's amazing.
Absolutely. And we have there's no G League. There's no affiliates. It is just those teams.
Yeah.
Like that's it. Yeah. And that's what you're fighting for with every year, a crop of new players, international players every single year.
And by the way, I know the difference between flying charter and not. At UCF, during my time, I think they fly charter now, but during mine, we flew commercial almost every flight. Man, it's not the same. You know, you're dragging your bags out. Yeah. You know, a day trip turns into like a 3-day trip. We're going to a place like Tulsa, Oklahoma. You got to connect through all these cities. And when you're going to play a sport like at a high level, it does have some wear on you. Obviously, I just learned that about the WNBA but the perspective you come from Duke, which had to have charter facilities. Yeah. They care about their basketball, sell out games, to the WNBA where it's like, hey, we're flying commercial and we're looking to make it and I'm playing with the best players in the world. That had to be a crazy transition.
Yeah, it was. I remember my coach would always say, my assistant coach, like, this is the best basketball in terms of kind of everything other than the court that you're ever going to play. Yeah. And I was like, no. Like, I'm trying to go pro. Right, what do you mean? Right. No. He's like, yes. And then I got there and I said, oh, he was right. Hey. I was like, you're right.
By the way, so aspirations-wise, like, step back. Like, I know for me, I got to college and pretty quick, I read, my NBA dreams were like, I don't know. I just got worked over in pickup. I should probably go to class. How early on did you have pro aspirations, and how did those progress, degress, or when did you, we're going to talk about, obviously you played in WNBA for years and then obviously retired, it sounded like 3 years ago now, yes. Which I'm sure was a big decision I want to get to, but like growing up, it was always just like, look, I'm going to play pro. You obviously thought about medicine.
Yeah. So pro was actually an afterthought for me because I was so diehard. I want to be a doctor. Yeah, I wanted to go to Duke and I wanted to be a doctor. Those were the two things I kind of said synonymously. As going to school and going to Duke, I realized I was smart, but to be able to achieve being a doctor and playing basketball at the highest level, it was going to have to be a one or the other for me personally. So I chose the option of continuing my basketball career. I changed education courses when I was in school and chose to pursue basketball and went all in on that. And so my goals for pro sports were just, if the Lord allowed me to get there, then I got there. And I would take that opportunity and run with it and see what it held. I didn't have dreams, okay, I want to play 15 years and do this and do that. I was going to take it one day at a time because I was able to be a pro if I made it to that point. That's
amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, by the way, congratulations on an incredible career. I mean, you're such an example. Even growing up with you, what an example you were at the time, but now you continue to be. And the story that we just kind of hit at a very high level, I'm sure you're going to be an inspiration, continue to be an inspiration for a ton of people.
Thank you.
I think it's really cool for you to accomplish all that and go through that injury, that grind, and then to be able to say, hey, I did this. Any regrets? Like, so is medicine still a passion, or did that kind of leave you when you commit all in, to the other thing?
I still love it, but it's not something that I think I'm going to pursue down the road. It was an awesome opportunity to get me to an amazing school. That's for sure.
Yeah. Very cool. So you retire, you played a little bit overseas, kind of world traveled a little bit, seen a lot of places.
So one quick also info plug about the WNBA and how women's professional sports work. So WNBA is like May-ish to September-ish. Okay. So then for a female athlete, like 99% of us would go overseas and play. Okay. So that would be September-ish to the following May-ish. And that cycle continued. And I would literally finish.
It's year-round.
It's year-round. So that's where the overseas came. So I'd play WNBA, overseas, WNBA, overseas, back and forth between the two. How did your body take? It didn't. Like, I am so thankful that I was able to walk off the court with my own 2 feet. Right. That I can still get out there and play if I want to. I definitely have some scars, some battle wounds, but, I'm still healthy enough to get out there and do what I want to do. So you do that back and forth. And so it's definitely a grind. I mean, I would finish the game in the WNBA and my overseas contract would say I had 7 days to get there.
Oh my gosh.
I
was going to ask you, like, what's the gap? They give you like a month?
No, 7 days.
7 days.
Mm-hmm. 7.
And you're right into practice, right into playing.
Full speed. A 32-game WNBA season, 7 days, a 32-game overseas season.
Oh my gosh, my ankles hurt. Yeah. So what was, give me like some contrast, WNBA versus overseas, like different facilities. I mean, you're still flying commercial.
Still flying commercial.
Still no charter?
Still no charter. That stayed the same.
Was it like, but play and level, was it, well, I guess a lot of those ladies were, the same people, right? Or no?
Some of them. So you take that 144 and then disperse them all across the world. So you still have great players. You're playing against like the best of the native countries players as well. And you've got language barriers and culture barriers. Like there's just so many different aspects that come into play when you're literally dropped off in a foreign country. And it's like, so I played in France, South Korea, Turkey, China, Spain. Wow. So I wasn't like on the Eiffel Tower every single day. Right. I wasn't like touring Paris.
Selfies. And
yeah, that's not how this worked. Like I lived in Lyon, France. So I flew in, got dropped off at my apartment. It's like practices at 5. Okay.
And were you basically by yourself? No friends who went with you? Just you.
Just me.
Don't necessarily speak the language.
Don't necessarily speak the language.
The language you speak is dunking on people. Wow.
Something like that.
Yeah, that is something like, I just tell people like hey, afterwards, hey, you want to think about playing overseas? And I'm like, man, like it's a grind over there. Like there's different levels. Mm-hmm. And I know specifically in men's, which I know better, like there are pro leagues in Europe that are legitimately, you get paid a lot of money to play in. They're really good players.
Oh, those EuroLeague teams, yeah.
There are pro leagues in Europe that are a straight up grind. You don't get paid a lot of money, and you're lonely, and you're not necessarily seeing the world like your friends think you probably are. So at least that's what I borrowed from. So
it is. That's the truth.
Yeah,
for sure.
And they were just talking about, buddies of mine that went over there, like you're on a 11-man roster, but you may be the only one that speaks English. Yes. Or there's one other person that is an American, and it's just an interesting culture. I had a friend of mine who I played with in UCF. He played in Japan for I think it's 15 years. Same team, same clip, which is like really rare.
That is super rare. Yeah. Like kudos to him for being able
just
to do
retired,
that.
But that's like as good as of experience as like you can have as far as like consistency.
Yeah.
Anyway, so tell us about that retirement feeling. How did you know you were done? I mean, obviously the grind. It's amazing at how long you were able to do that. Because college alone beats you up.
Yeah.
You've been playing forever since you were a little kid. So it's like, were you like, was your body give out? Did your mind give out? What went first?
I definitely felt like the Lord had called me away from the game. Yeah. That was a huge component of me walking away from the game. And then secondly, I did not feel like I could play at the level that I had been playing physically. I just felt like, it was taking me a little bit too long to recover. It was taking me too long to warm up and get ready to play. So those two aspects are the two that called me away from the game of basketball. But I do, not everyone has this. Like, I do feel like I could close the chapter of basketball and not feel like I had any regrets. Like, I do know that I poured everything out. I played. I know that I competed. I know that like I said, I went from a last pick in the draft with 0% chance of making the team to being a starter, top 5 in the league twice in rebounding, going to the WNBA finals. Like apart from winning a WNBA championship, there's nothing that I'm like, oh, I really wish I could have done that, because I played, I pursued something, and I know that the Lord closed that door for me. And so that was my kind of like retirement moment. I was in South Korea, halfway around the world, and knew like when this season is done, this is it for me.
Wow. It's amazing. What a healthy way to view it and what a proper way to view it. And then like moving forward without necessarily any major regrets. Yeah. I mean, I don't think a lot of people can say that, but that's good that you had that feeling. And a lot of it probably has to do with your faith and calling that, hey, there's more out there for me except for this sport's allowing me to do some amazing things. At least that's what I pick up. So what was next when you decided to hang him up? Who'd you call first, by the way?
So at this time I was married. So it was my husband and I were overseas. We were living in South Korea. We were done. So we spent some time in Seoul because I didn't really get to see the city of Seoul. So we hung out in Seoul.
Right.
Then we shipped off to Thailand for like a week and laid on the beaches of Phuket for a little while. I mean, can't really decompress over there. So really enjoyed that. Came back to the States, and then it was like, okay, here we go. Time to figure out life after basketball. Like while that chapter was complete, I mean, I really had no idea initial point of what I was going to do next.
That's what I was going to ask you. Had you had any thoughts about what you wanted to do next? Or was it just like, come back, let me finish this chapter, I'll give it everything I have? And that probably goes to you giving it everything you have, that you really haven't been given much thought about what was next. You're just like, look, this is what's in front of me. I'm competing at the highest level. And then boom, it's over. How long was that transition? You took a week in Thailand, but when you got back, did you continue to lay on the Florida beaches? Where were you living, by the way?
I was living back with my dad. My husband and I were living back with my dad. Like, this is real life transition because we had met and married in Phoenix, and that's where he was working. That's where I was working. So he left everything as well to come and support me in these last couple years because we knew it was nearing the end of my career. And so there was nothing, we were coming back with our suitcases, dropping them off like, all right, what do we do? So we just spent a lot of time praying, just figuring out what is it that the Lord has for us in this moment. And it started with him working first. So he found work here in Orlando. And so then for me, my next step was, okay, he was like, you don't have to work. Like, you're all right. You don't have to work for a little while. I was like, no. I'm used to go. So like, I can't just sit here. And so I was doing some speaking engagements at the time, and I was like, okay, why don't I just sub? So why don't I like substitute teach? I've always loved kids.
I was going to say, always been great with kids.
I like loved kids, and then always have had the heart and passion to pour back into this next generation. Because I remember coaches and teachers that poured into me and really helped me through some pivotal years of my life. So I was like, okay, let's do this. It's temporary. I figured it out. Applied to a couple different schools. Foundation was the first one actually that responded. And it was just on a whim. Like, I was driving past and saw the sign. I was like, oh, Foundation's like right here. So let me just apply to it. Applied and haven't left.
Yeah. How long has it been?
This end of the school year will be year 3.
And you're doing coaching of all sorts, like middle school, high school.
So I
PE.
teach PE. So I'm a teacher there. And then I coach the varsity girls basketball team there. But I actually just received a promotion that I will be the dean of students next year.
Wow. Well deserved.
The school.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It makes us feel both like full-blown adults.
Yeah, and I'm like, wow.
It's like dean of students.
Yeah.
It's like last time I saw you, we were in high school. That's awesome. Congratulations. That's well deserved. So when that transition was happening, like, what was like the feeling? Were you like, hey, I'm going to just wait until I'm kind of feel like I know what's next? Obviously you said you were praying about it a lot and stuff like that. Or was there any aha moment of like, hey, this is what I want to do? Are you just excited about this next step and kind of learning along the way?
Well, I think the one thing that I didn't realize until I was going through this process, and for anyone that's transitioning, the one thing that basketball teaches you is you actually have a lot of skills that you don't realize you're learning while you're playing. You're learning teamwork. You're learning communication. You're learning cooperation amongst other people. You're learning time management. You're learning really to react on the fly. Like, you're used to a hectic, busy schedule. You're used to having to grind and pursue something. And so I was learning all these things without knowing that I was learning them. And so then once I was able to sit down and kind of look on paper when it came official resume writing time and looking, I'm like, I have all these skills.
Yeah.
I've practiced them all, just didn't realize what I was doing. I was practicing them on the basketball court, but now they still apply to the real world setting. And so once I realized I have this wealth of knowledge and skills, and then apply that with the pursuits and passions of my heart, which were, pouring into this next generation and really being around children, the two merged into one, so that this opportunity at Foundation wasn't just like a whim. It was something that I genuinely am passionate about every single day.
Yeah, that's amazing. And something you just said that I never really thought about was the busy schedule and the hectic communication, and you're balancing multiple priorities because your mind's on the game later or the bad game that you just played, but you also have a test or friendship or all this other stuff that you just kind of get used to juggling.
Definitely. Yeah. You learn time management really well as an athlete that you don't even think that you are learning.
Yeah, and I think I had a decent amount of insecurity based around when I was graduating of like, I feel like I'm behind. Like all these other people have done internships or kind of maybe know what they want to do or even already have jobs. And I'm like, I feel like I'm just starting. Yeah. But that is cool to realize that when you go, hey, there's some of these skills transfer. I just need to get busy and figure out, what fires me up. So tell me about you had the foundation. Yeah. That's exciting. I'm going to follow along. You guys had a pretty good year. I was looking on Instagram.
We did.
Went to the playoffs?
We did. So this is my second year being the head coach over there.
By the way, are you hard on your kids? Like, what kind of coach are you?
I like fluctuate. It depends on my mood, you know. Sometimes I really get after it. Then I'm like, okay, I got to be nice because like my nice is probably still like
Yeah.
so like, got to back it up a little bit. But so it's my second year as a head coach over there. District champs back to back. We made it to the regional finals last year in 2A. We moved up to 3A this year, and we made it to the regional semis. So definitely taking things in the right direction. Because I don't know if you remember when we played, foundation was like
they're on the lower end.
You know. So we're trying to raise the level over there.
That's
in the
okay. You got to start
world.
somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, but that women's TFA team. I mean, even before you guys were like top in the country, it was still like a good basketball program. So there are years and years that you're building that and developing that and stuff like that.
Definitely.
Do you still keep in touch with the ladies that were from those? Because you guys, the team in high school, you played AU.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys were super close. So it seems like you guys are still in touch.
Yeah, we still have a group chat. You know, whenever anyone's in town and we're together, we'll get together, have dinner, lunch, whatever it may be, just keeping up with each other. Everyone's got like babies now and everything. I'm like, wow, we're old.
Yeah, you're the dean of students.
Yeah.
They have babies. No, that's great. So then the Kingdom Basketball Academy, I saw that. What led that?
An extension. You know, and it's an extension of my pursuits and passions to really be able to use basketball even more so to be able to provide an opportunity for kids to grow. Obviously, it's through the skills training. So that's the big priority of it is skills training, camps, clinics, leagues. We kind of do a little bit of everything. Even down to elementary on Thursday, I've got my little elementary kids. I love bringing them in there. We've got the K5s all the way through 5th grade, and we are actually in there getting after it, you know, ball handling, shooting, layups, defense, all of it. You know, it's just another platform to be able to share with these kids about the Lord. And so it's combining basketball and that opportunity to be able to really reach into this next generation of kids.
Yeah, it's almost like you're able to use everything that we just mentioned, talking about your experience and career, and then like transfer it to this next generation in a way that's like big impact. Big impact. Because one thing about coaches too, like I remember looking back at my life, there's just like these unique opportunities and ages and life moments that you're super vulnerable or looking for guidance, and to have really good guidance can make the difference in your next 30, 40 years.
Definitely.
And it's just kind of got goosebumps thinking about you're going to be that for somebody without maybe even realizing it. I'm like realizing as an adult, like I sometimes reach out to coaches and I'm like, I don't think you had any idea, but this line that you said to me during this time just sticks with me, and I replay it, and, you know, or just simply being there for you. Or being tough on you, which was more often the case with my coaches. You know?
Definitely. I've been yelled at a few, just a few times.
So is there anything, like, what do you think would be the biggest challenge now that you've made the transition from sports to the classroom and you're working with kids? You obviously said you put that chapter, you have no regrets. Do you still miss it? Do you still, you know, think about it? Obviously, you're still in touch with some teammates. Is there any challenges that maybe you saw that you didn't expect when you first started working in a non-basketball capacity?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely miss it. I mean, the thing is, I miss the thrill of playing basketball. It's kind of hard to replicate the opportunity to like get that adrenaline just all the way up and really compete and get after it on the court for 40 minutes. So I definitely miss that. One of the biggest challenges for me, honestly, is like I eat a lot. Yeah. So like not gaining weight, because what I didn't realize was how hard I was working out every single day, because it was just what I did. And I'm still incredibly active, work out all the time, but you know, I'm practicing for 5-6 hours a day. Yeah. So I could eat whatever I wanted to.
Yeah.
So now I can't do that. So that's like me personally. But another challenge is getting used to having like a rhythmic schedule. So as I mentioned earlier, I was really used to a chaotic schedule. You know, I was used to fly here, this city, play this game, do this, Teaching is I got to be there at 7:30. You know, I can leave at 3:30, Monday through Friday, and it's very rhythmic. So getting used to a rhythmic schedule every day, getting used to being in the same place, you know, being stationary, because I wasn't in any place longer than 6 months. So being stationary in one place. Again, not having that competitive drive, the competitive atmosphere, not really having anyone yelling at you. So there's like those small nuances that you have to get used to in transitioning out of sports into the real world, that you just don't realize that you're doing once you've been in that environment for so long.
Yeah, it's funny. Like everything you mentioned is like good things, bad things. Like rhythmic schedule can be perceived as like, oh, this is boring because I know what to expect, but it's like really helpful and really healthy. And there's advantages to that. You can plan stuff. You can spend time with your family, loved ones, right? When for a while, for me, and I know you'll probably relate, it's like summer, sorry, I'm just always gone, or I can never, maybe I can come for a day, but it's never going to be for the full trip because I always have a tournament or Thanksgiving or whatever it is. So those things I'm really enjoying further removed from that life a little bit more. You mentioned the weight gain. That's funny. I've never talked about this. I still struggle with that because I think it's like a habit thing to where like it's hard to turn off, where like Pinky, my wife's like, why do you always have to eat like 2 or 3? Why do you have to eat 2 plates? Like, why can't you just eat 1 plate? And I'm like, I think it's just years of being like, and that was good. Like I needed to put on weight when I was playing. Yeah. So I was always used to being like the skinny kid that had to like eat a lot just to keep weight on during the season. So I've never actually talked with somebody that like in their adult life, you're like, you're trying to turn it back, but it's so deeply ingrained. And then, but I do work out a lot, but it's almost like I can never work out enough as I did. So it's something's got to give here, you know?
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's
like,
hysterical.
A hard hour, that's probably something for me also I had to get used to, is like, it's okay to only work out for an hour.
Right.
It's okay to take off days. Like it was just so ingrained that more than one day in a row, like I could take the 1, but day 2, whoa, that's too much time off. And now I'm like, no, it's okay.
Right.
You could take the time off. Like it's okay. Yeah. We can do this. You know, so just like the balance of working out and eating and all of that stuff. And you mentioned about the holidays. I actually do really appreciate that because I missed when I played overseas in China and South Korea. I never came home for Christmas. Like I was over there for Christmas. Yeah. So to be able to be home for 3 consecutive Christmases and know that I'm home, I'm not going anywhere. I get a Thanksgiving break, which I never had. Yes. You know, to be able to celebrate these holidays with my family and really enjoy them, that's a huge blessing. Like that's one thing, like, that's staying. We're not changing that. Yeah. Well,
basketball season full. We're recording this in March. Conference tournaments on the men's side are starting. Things are heating up in the NBA. Do you still watch sports, whether it's women's, men's, otherwise? Do you have any favorite teams, players still?
Yeah, we definitely watch. My husband we have that very much in common. We are basketball junkies still, so we watch the NBA. We're going to watch all of March Madness and all that. Obviously, I'm partial to Duke. You know, I'm a Blue Devil at heart, but I just love really good games in March. Yeah. Like on the college side, I love really good games in March. On the NBA side, like I want to see what these teams do with these last 15-ish games, because it's when they really start ramping up to fight for playoff position and then getting into the playoffs because they have the new play-in game now. Yeah.
Well, we'll wrap up, and I would love to just give you a platform. So anybody that's listening, let's say somebody maybe is in the middle of that transition right now or has made that transition. I will just say to cap off, you have been an amazing example, an amazing human being. Your entire story, we'd have to be here for 10 hours. But just truly for me, and whether you knew it or not, I was always watching. Just the way that you handled yourself, just so classy, always a smile on your face, always were a good friend to me. And it's cool that we've reconnected and you made the time to come do this, because I'm a huge, huge fan. And I know the listeners or anybody who gets a chance to watch this, you'll be a huge fan too. But if there's anything you want to say, what's on your heart, mind, anybody in that transition has made it that would encourage them, that'd be a good way to cap it off.
Okay. Anybody who's making the transition from sports of any kind at any level to what I call the real world, just know that, you will be all right. And I know that can seem very simple, but it's like, there is this moment when you're done that you're like, what am I going to do? Yeah. Am I going to be able to do this? Like, I don't know this. I don't know. There's so many question marks, but you will be okay. Like, you will be able to make that transition, but take the one thing that you knew from playing sports, which is keep working hard. It's not going to just happen. Like, you can't just think it into existence. Continue to take what you've learned on that basketball court or soccer field or baseball diamond, and apply those same principles to whatever it is you want to do next, and be okay to fail. I mean, think of how many times that we missed shots, missed game winners, missed opportunities to win games, felt like you couldn't throw it in the ocean. You grinded through that. So it's going to be the same thing in this transition from sports to the real world. Like, be okay to fail. You may not get it the first time, but keep going. Keep plugging away at it, because you've been given the intangibles to be able to make something happen.
That's an amazing word. And that also makes me think the be okay to fail. I think that's another thing that athletes develop, to where sometimes you have games or practices that you want to run and hide, come out of your room. I know for me, you just have a game that was so bad, or you just didn't play well, didn't handle yourself well. But then you got to show up to practice. Yeah. You got to go play the game, whether it's a day or 2 days later, and you build that, because wherever you are in life, there's some moments you want to crawl up and just pull the sheet over your head. But that's a really good word to encourage somebody that may be struggling. So thank you, KT.
Thank you.
I appreciate you making the time. That was awesome.
Definitely.
That was awesome.